When is the Sabbath? From the sighting of the first sliver of the renewed moon, you will then count 6 days from that day, and that will be the Sabbath, or the seventh day for that month. For example, if you look here, this is the month of Ethanim, or the seventh month, the seventh Hebrew month, which fell between September and October of 2014. Many people call this seventh month Tishri, which is the Babylonian name, which is incorrect. It is Ethanim according to the scriptures, which is in 1 Kings 8 and 2. All right, if you see here on the 25th of September at sundown, the moon was spotted, or the first sliver was spotted. That was Yom Teruah. Many Jewish people celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. That is scripturally incorrect, and you cannot rename the name that Jehovah had named according to scripture. So that was Yom Teruah, which was the 25th of September at sundown, from that Thursday to that Friday at sundown. So the moon was spotted that Thursday. So what happens is the Sabbath will be from Wednesday night into Thursday. If you look here on October 1st through October 2nd, the moon is a perfect half, or it's called the first quarter, and it's a waxing first quarter. It's progressing into the full moon. The following week is the 14th of the Hebrew month of Ethanim, which is a full moon. The 14th of the Hebrew month is always a full moon. Do not forget that. On the 21st of the month of Ethanim, it falls on the 15th through the 16th of October, which is the waning last quarter. And then the following week is the 28th of Ethanim, which falls between October 22nd and 23rd, and that is the waning crescent. And then it disappears, and then you look for the new moon again, and we'll discuss that further. But if you look at this calendar as well, the counting, you see how the seventh day, and at sundown on the 4th of October, if you see that right there, that is the beginning. That was the beginning of Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, or the Day of Covering. And then right after the full moon, which was from the 8th to the 9th, we immediately went into the Feast of Tabernacle, or Sukkot, which started on October 9th through all the way until October 17th. It will officially, the Feast of Tabernacle ended on October 16th. However, the last great day, or the eighth day, the set apart day where you do no servile work, was on the 17th of October, and it ended at sundown. Let's continue. Here is day one, again, just reiterating what we just discussed in reference to the calendar. Here's how the sliver will look on day one. It's just barely a sliver, and it's usually, when you look at NASA.com, or you look at the different sites that give you the phases of the moon in real time, it's usually visible to the naked eye roughly around 3 to 4%. If the sliver is 5% or 6%, you're ready into the second day. The first day is usually anywhere high 2s, but mostly around 3%. You can see it with the naked eye. Here's a very good article that I found in Microsoft Encarta. Again, this is a free encyclopedia, and it states, about a week after a new moon, though here it's being referred to as when the moon is completely dark, this still holds true from the sighting of the sliver. The moon is in first quarter, resembling a luminous half circle. Another week, so basically what it's saying is, after the new moon, 7 days later, it is a half circle, and that's what we talked about the first quarter. It's like a perfect half of a pie. Another week later, the full moon shows it's fully lighted near side. Okay, so now we're looking at the full moon 7 days later, so that is the 14th of the Hebrew month. A week afterward, in its last quarter, the moon appears as a half circle again. So now we're looking at the waning half moon, or perfect pi, which is the last quarter, as we discussed from the last slide in reference to the calendar. Then the circle is repeated each lunar month. The moon is full when it is further away from the sun than the earth. It is new when it is closer. So I find this very interesting that this is public knowledge, people. This is things you can just readily have access to in reference to finding out or solidifying or verifying rather what I am presenting to you. Again, we have the first quarter, which is a half moon. This is, again, the waxing. When you say waxing, that means it's growing. It's growing into the full moon, okay? So this is a waxing half moon, or what is referred to as the first quarter. And this is day 7 of the Hebrew month. So this is your first Sabbath. Your first Sabbath will always look like a half moon or first quarter. Again, here's your full moon, day 14 of the Hebrew month. Again, always a full moon. Whenever you see a full moon, when it's completely full, it's usually between the 14th and the 15th when the moon stays full, and then it starts decreasing or starts waning. Okay, so day 14 of the Hebrew month, the moon is always full. And I find this interesting because 2 of the called out feasts that Jehovah has commanded, the first one is Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, Passover first, then Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that is the 14th and the 15th of Aviv. The moon is full. So Jehovah was providing his natural light during the time of the feast, when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, when it was time for them to leave Egypt. He perfectly timed it to where they had natural light from Jehovah aside from the pillar of fire. So I think this is pretty amazing that even when we celebrate it today, we have natural light out in the field. If we have to go live in tents in the wilderness or in the mountains, we have the natural light because this feast always falls on the 14th and 15th of Aviv. When it comes to Sukkot, which is the 15th of Ethanim, not Tishri, Ethanim. On the 15th of Ethanim, it is a full moon again. The moon is always full, like I just discussed, between the 14th and the 15th of every Hebrew month. So again, he is providing his light, and these are the 2 feasts that last for 8 days. And I think that's pretty amazing that when we're supposed to be called out, we are supposed to be away from our homes, out in the wilderness, out in the desert, or up in the mountains, and he has his natural light to provide for his children. I think that's pretty amazing. Let's continue. Here is the 21st day of the Hebrew month, which is the last quarter. It is the waning half moon. And again, as we, per the calendar that we saw earlier, the moon is decreasing now. So you came from your full moon, which was the 14th of the Hebrew month. Then 7 days later, which is the 21st of the Hebrew month, you're going to always have a last quarter. So visually, you'll be able to look in the sky and see what day it is, or be within a proximity of 1 or 2, you may be 1 or 2 days off, depending on how you train your eye and how closely you observe the moon. But whenever you see that perfect circle, that perfect half circle rather, know that it's the 21st. If it's the last quarter, if you see it on the first quarter, know that's the 7th. Okay, so the moon grows, it comes to a full, then it starts decreasing. Here is day 28 of the Hebrew month. It's always a waning crescent. Now, let me please note here that on the 28th day, a lot of times it's very hard to see that waning crescent because it's pretty much getting ready to disappear, to go into the dark phase. So there are times I have seen it. There are times I have not seen it. However, just know that 7 days after the last quarter will be day 28, which is the waning crescent. If you're blessed to find it, by all means, take pictures of it. But it's a lot of times it's hard to see it with the naked eye, or it's even hard to catch it when it's out. So once you finish with day 28, you will then look for the new or renewed moon on days 29 and 30, which are usually dark days. So back to the calendar, you will see here, you have to look very closely on October 24th and 25th. The new moon one will look for the new moon again, depending on when you view this video, whether this has passed or not. But you will look for the new moon on days 29 and 30th, which for October 2014, it's the 24th and the 25th of October. So once it's spotted, whether it's spotted Friday, then Sabbath will be from Thursday to Friday of the following month, the following Hebrew month. If it's spotted on Saturday the 25th, then Sabbath will be from Friday to Saturday, and we will be in perfect alignment with everybody else who does the normal Gregorian Friday to Saturday Sabbath with it, which is usually your Seventh-day Adventists and your whether Jews or even the Messianic believers who abides by the Gregorian calendar. Please let me reiterate this. These are not non-days. I know there are some sect, especially the Eighth-day Sabbatarians, and again, no disrespect, but they call these non-days. That is incorrect. It is still part of that Hebrew month or lunar month until the new moon or renewed moon, the sliver, is spotted again. So these are still part of the month. So even though it's dark, it is still days 29 and day 30. It is still part of that month. A lunar month does not go past day 30. Please keep that in mind. Again, a lunar month consists of 29 or 30 days. The sighting of the renewed moon is the beginning of the lunar/Hebrew month. It is not spotting the moon and then you start counting the second day. You see the sliver, you count that as day 1. In 1 Samuel 20 and 24 through 27, it states, "And David hid in the field. And when the new moon came, the sovereign sat down by the food to eat. And the sovereign sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall with Jehonathan standing, and Abner sitting by Shaul's side. But the place of David was empty. But Shaul spoke not a word that day, for he thought, it is an accident he is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. And it came to be the next day, the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Shaul said to Jehonathan his son, Why has the son of Yishai not come to eat, either yesterday or today?" And it clearly dictates that the next day after the new moon is the second day of the month. Please understand this, people. When you spot the new moon, the second day is the second day of the month. The day after is that simple. Think about this. Passover, determined by the moon. Feast of Unleavened Bread, determined by the moon. Feast of First Fruits, determined by the moon. Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, or Pentecost, determined by the moon. The Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah, determined by the moon. The Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, determined by the moon. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, or Festival of Booths, determined by the moon. But the Sabbath, determined by the sun? People of Yahovah, does it make sense that all 7 of Yahovah's feast days are governed by the moon, but his Sabbath, his most precious and sought-after day, is governed by a pagan calendar or the sun? Think about it. Here we have some of your most common rebuttals in reference to the lunar Sabbath. The first one. If the moon was created on the 4th day, then how can the moon determine the Sabbath, which was only 3 days later? So therefore, the Sabbath is governed by the sun or the solar calendar, or our current Gregorian calendar, which is based off of the sun. According to Genesis 1 and 14 through 16, both the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day. Yeah. Let's dig a little deeper. The Bible does not state what phase the moon was appearing on the earth. Furthermore, the Bible does not state what position the earth was in relation to the moon when it was created. And if you remember the how the sun gives light to the moon and the earth at the same time. The moon was created as a whole, and it remains as a whole. The phases of the moon are determined by the moon's and Earth's rotation. Here's another article from Microsoft Encarta. I'm telling you, I'm getting a lot of information just from public knowledge. It states the moon shows progressively different phases as it moves along its orbit around Earth. Half the moon is always in sunlight, just as half of Earth has day while the other half has night. Thus, there is no permanent dark side of the moon, which is sometimes confused with the moon's far side, the side that always faces away from Earth. The phases of the moon depend on how much of the sunlit half can be seen at any one time. This is very, very powerful. As I just stated earlier, here's Genesis 1 and 14 through 16. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it came to be so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. Here's a very interesting fact. I would even say a revelation, go as far as to say a revelation. Being that the sun and moon was created on the same day, it is very apparent that the moon was lit and not dark. Therefore, it was more than likely it was in its waxing phase, progressing, moving towards the first quarter, as we discussed in the last chapter. If the moon was dark, Yehovah could not have called it the lesser light to rule the night. Here's another interesting fact, or something I find very interesting. The Hebrew word for day or days is yom, which also can mean a year, age, a period of time, continually, seasons, always, etc. So it doesn't always refer to a 24-hour period, and we will see in the next slide. The Hebrew word for day is yom, Strong's number 3117. And as you can see, there's a lot of references that it makes to this word, but that doesn't necessarily mean a 24-hour period. And if you just pay close attention to what I have highlighted, you'll see the day right there. But then the next line down, you'll see lifetime, time period, year. Then you go down to the usage ever, continually, always. So there is an argument among scholars whether the earth was created in 7 actual 24-hour periods, or 7 years, or 7,000 years. The jury's still out on that. There's several schools of thought on that. That is not the basis of my argument today. I just thought I'd present that fact in this case in reference to when the moon and the sun was created. It's basically combating or rebuttaling the argument that you cannot use the moon to determine the Sabbath, when in all actuality the moon and the sun were created on the exact same day. So that kills the argument saying, well, you can't use the moon, but we're going to stick to the sun calendar. If you're negating one, then you got to negate both. This is for our 8th day Sabbatarians. And by no means is this in any form as a disrespect. However, the Sabbath being on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and the 29th of the Hebrew or lunar calendar is scripturally incorrect. And here's why. The sighting of the new or renewed moon, the first sliver, is day 1. You do not start counting on the number 2. Like I stated before, I will use the same scripture several times to make my point, and several different points, because there's certain parts of certain scriptures that stick out to prove my point. So we're going to read 1 Samuel 20 and 24 through 27 again. And David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the sovereign sat down by the food to eat. And the sovereign sat on his seat as at other times, on a seat by the wall, with Jonathan standing and Abner sitting by Shaul's side, but the place of David was empty. But Shaul spoke not a word that day, for he thought, it is an accident, he is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. And it came to be the next day, the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Shaul said to Jonathan his son, why has the son of Yeshua not come to eat, either yesterday or today? People of Yehovah, it is clear again that when you spot the new moon, the sliver, the next day is the second day of the month. This sect of lunar Sabbath observers use this chapter as a reference or a basis for their argument, stating that the Sabbath was on the 15th. As I will show you, the 15th was not a Sabbath. Exodus 16 and 1. And they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their going out of the land of Mitzrayim. Exodus 15 and 5 through 8 states, and it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moshe and Aharon said to all the children of Israel, at evening you shall know that Yehovah has brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And in the morning you shall see the esteem of Yehovah, for he hears your grumblings against Yehovah. And what are we that you grumble against us? And Moshe said, in that Yehovah gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfaction, for Yehovah hears your grumblings which you make against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against Yehovah. Now you're approaching the 16th day, and there is no mention of this day being the Sabbath. Let's continue. In Exodus 16 and 12 through 14 states, I have heard the grumblings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, between the evenings you are to eat meat, and in the morning you are to be satisfied with bread. And you shall know that I am Yehovah your Elohim. And it came to be that quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And the layer of dew went up, and see, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost on the ground. Now it is the 16th day, being that Yehovah's day starts at sundown. Let's continue. Exodus 16 and 21 through 22, and we will end with these in this argument. And they gathered it every morning, each one according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. There is absolutely no indication of how many days there were between the 15th and the Sabbath. Here's a very common rebuttal. If there was another Sabbath aside from Friday to Saturday, then why didn't Yeshua observe or even mention it? If the Friday to Saturday Sabbath was good enough for Yeshua, it's good enough for me. During Yeshua's time on earth, Israel, due to its many transgressions, was under Roman rule, and the Julian calendar was already instituted. The Julian calendar was the dominant civil calendar of that day, just as the Gregorian calendar is the dominant one of today. He did not come to realign the calendar back to Yehovah's reckoning of time. If that was the case, why didn't he free Israel from Roman oppression? which would have been a precursor to correcting the calendar Israel was to follow. Because, as Proverbs 28:2 states, because of transgression of a land, many are its rulers. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, right is maintained. His main purpose was to reconcile man back unto Yehovah. Also keep in mind, people of Yehovah, during the time when Yeshua walked the earth, he was dealing with so much to the point of even combating these religious leaders about keeping Torah properly. So at that time, they weren't even keeping Torah properly. So bringing up a lunar Sabbath, going back to the regular Sabbath, would have been a moot point because they weren't even keeping the basis of the Sabbath properly. They were adding laws on top of the laws that Yehovah had made, and which is a sad testimony that Judaism adds to the word of Yehovah, and sadly enough, Christianity takes away from it. The rest he will set in order once he returns in the new millennium, which is a time to come. However, Yehovah did instruct the children of Israel in Jeremiah 6:16, "Thus said Yehovah, stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for yourselves." But they, the children of Israel, said, "We do not walk in it." Prophetic. A time to come. This is the last chapter of this presentation. Here we will illustrate that in the millennium, or the time to come as it's properly titled, that the Sabbath will be observed according to Yehovah's commands in the future. So this is a note for those who are under the impression of we're under grace and we no longer have to keep the Sabbath. That is a misnomer. That is against Scripture. If Yehovah commanded us to obey the Sabbath, and it was well documented, that the Sabbath was kept in biblical times, and the Sabbath is going to be kept in the future, why wouldn't we keep it now? Remember, Yehovah is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And when he commanded us to keep the Sabbath, he said it is an everlasting covenant. He said, keep it throughout your generations forever. In Isaiah 66:23, it states, "And it shall be that from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yehovah." It goes on to state in Ezekiel 46:1-3, "Thus said the Master Yehovah, the gate of the inner court facing the east is shut the 6 days of work, but on the Sabbath it is open, and on the day of the new moon it is open. And the prince shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate from the outside, and he shall stand by the post. And the priest shall prepare his burnt offering and his peace offerings, and he shall bow himself at the threshold of the gate, and shall go out, but the gate is not shut until evening. And the people of the land shall also bow themselves at the entrance of this gate before Yehovah on the Sabbaths and on the new moons." I like this scripture because this will minister to those who just strictly like to read the New Testament only. In Colossians 3:16-17, it states, "Let no one therefore judge you by eating or in drinking or in respect of a festival or a new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah." The shadow of what to come? The time of the millennium, when the temple of Yehovah is rebuilt and Yeshua reigns on the earth with us, as described in Ezekiel 46:1-3 and Isaiah 66:23. Let's read Ezekiel 46:1-3 again. "Thus said the Master Yehovah, the gate of the inner courtyard facing east is shut 6 days of work, but on the Sabbath it is opened, and on the day of the new moon it is opened. And the prince shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate from the outside, and he shall stand by the post. And the priest shall prepare his burnt offering and his peace offerings, And he shall bow himself at the threshold of the gate, and shall go out. But the gate is not shut until evening. And the people of the land shall also bow themselves at the entrance of this gate before Yahovah on the Sabbaths and on the new moon. Find it interesting that they always mention the Sabbath and the new moon next to each other. Pay attention to that. Again, Isaiah 66:23. And it shall be that from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yahovah. This is a time to come. It has not happened yet. People of Yahovah, surely the Almighty will use the Gregorian Friday to Saturday to determine the Sabbath in his kingdom. Let's continue. Remember the word sign? In Revelation 7:2-3, and I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 messengers to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads. The Greek word for sealed is phragizo. And it means a lot of things: to set a seal upon, to mark with a seal, to seal for security from Satan. But let's pay very close attention to what I have highlighted here. And, you could just pause it and read it at your leisure. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of time, let's look at what's highlighted. Mark a person, be sealed by God, in order to prove, confirm, place beyond doubt. Here's where it gets even more interesting. And it was said to them that they shall not harm the grass of the earth, or any green matter, or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of Elohim upon their foreheads. The Greek word here for seal is phragisi, which is Strong's number 4973. Now, if you see what's highlighted here, you're going to see something that jumps out at you according to when he said there's a sign between me and you, or me and the children of Israel, rather. The name of God and Christ stamped upon their foreheads. That which anything is confirmed, proved, authenticated as by seal, a token or proof. Remember that from the previous video. Token or proof. Could this be the sign that was referred to in Exodus 31 and Ezekiel 20? Something to think about. I will close with this. In Hebrews 4:9-11, so there remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Elohim. For the one having entered into his rest has himself also rested from his works, as Elohim rested from his own. Let us therefore do our utmost to enter into that rest, lest anyone fall after the same example of disobedience. And you will see this example of disobedience in Ezekiel 20:11-20. The Greek word is sabbatismos, which simply means Sabbath keeping. In my summary, I will close with this statement. People of Yahovah, please do not be deceived. Sunday is not the Sabbath. Neither is Saturday. Neither is the 8th, 15th, 22nd, or the 29th of the Hebrew month. The Almighty's true Sabbath always has been and always will be on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th of every lunar or Hebrew month. This gives every day of the Gregorian week a chance to be a Sabbath. I pray this movie was informative and helpful, and that you have a better understanding of the Almighty's true Sabbath. I know over an hour and a half, going on 2 hours, is quite a long time, but I wanted to give the people of Yahovah a clear understanding and cover every angle as much as possible of the arguments that are out there and the misconception and the confusion surrounding this subject. I pray that you have a clearer understanding of the true Sabbath of Yahovah. Take your time, share this with friends, pause it, rewind it, go over and over, because there was a lot of information, a lot of quotes, a lot of scripture. Do the study yourself. Do not take my word for it. Do the study yourself. Pray unto Yahovah and ask him to lead, guide, and direct you. Thank you for watching. More to come. Shalom.